You are now entering the horror sanctum.
Welcome back to the Horror Sanctum podcast. I'm Jay with Kellen and TJ, and we're also joined today by rocker Magdalene Rose, formerly of the band Gold, Frankincense, and Myrrh, now flying solo. Magdalene, thank you so much for taking some time with us, and welcome to the Sanctum.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I've caught your band, and I assume it's slightly intentional. Like the first thing that gravitates to you in Gold, Frankincense, and Myrrh is the outfits. Like you're like
Yeah.
goth cheerleaders, and I saw that somewhere on Instagram. I'm like, oh, that looks neat. And then I started listening to music. I love all of it because I'm kind of a hardcore guy. Like I love like bands like Knock Loose, Under Oath,
Okay.
Flyleaf. Like you and Gold, Frankincense, and Myrrh have hints of all those bands. So I enjoy it
Yeah.
personally. And I assume that if you dressed up as a goth cheerleader, then you probably had some horror ties and you liked horror films. So I'm like, I'm going to ask
Yeah.
her to come on the show. And here we are. So I've seen your music described as beautycore,
Mhm.
which I think is fantastic. Like there's so many cores, but beautycore is probably one of the funnest ones I've heard. And I totally understand that. Your solo stuff is great. You and it's your sisters, you all slap pretty hard. So if you want, just take a second and tell everybody listening to us about yourself and how you got into the scene and music and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. So, like you said, my name is Magdalene Rose, and the new music is pretty similar to kind of what the Gold Frankincense and Summer sound was, but it's taken on kind of a new life to it. We're adding more like pop punk elements and like trap elements into it, so it's still super heavy, but it's got kind of like a modern take on that. It's heavy guitars and that puts the music but there's still that sing-along aspect to it. We like to bring in like pop punk elements and just kind of get the crowd involved at the same time, and but it's still like it plays into the girly aspect of it because I just feel like it's fun to poke fun at that. But then I come on stage and it's like I scream and everyone's like, what is going on? Like, this is not what we expected.
It's awesome. And like I said, I enjoy the music. I'm a hardcore guy. You definitely have some pipes on you for sure. And that's the thing, like, in GFM, you're cheerleaders, and then when you get to growling and screaming, like it definitely changes for sure. And I can appreciate that. So we asked you to pick a movie for us, and you went with 2018's A Quiet Place, which was directed by Jim Halpert himself, John Krasinski. Uh, it was written originally by Brian Woods and Scott Beck, and I have their dictionary. I meant to have it. I just have my still book, but they wrote or published their diaries when they were making the film Haunt. So they were trying to get Haunt made, and while they were trying to get that made, they were also trying to get A Quiet Place picked up, and they didn't get it picked up until Krasinski jumped on, and the studio's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, we can work with that." But Haunt was a great movie. A Quiet Place is a great movie. They also wrote The Boogeyman that came out this year, which was a Stephen King adaptation. And they wrote 45 with Adam Driver. I won't comment on that one
Okay.
because it wasn't that great. But if you're unfamiliar with the film, basically aliens have invaded and they hunt by sound. So we follow the family as they try to quietly navigate this new terrain and the tragedies that it brings.
I'm just going to go back 1 second, just for a second. Did you honestly try to slide the word slaps in earlier, like you're not almost 40? Is that something that happened? Did I just have a fever
You don't
dream?
know how old I am, sir. And slaps is a great term. We use it all the time.
No, that just caught me off guard. Speaking of being caught off guard, talk about being caught off guard in a movie with monsters that track you down by sound. I hadn't seen this movie since it came out in 2018. And I remember watching it and loving it when it came out. It's I would say it's up there with some of the greatest suspense movies ever made. The movie starts off and makes you feel uneasy, and they never let you have a moment. I mean, other than the
Yeah.
waterfall scene, the movie keeps tension the entire time. There's time jumps, obviously, moving forward, going from the intro scene where the family's looking for medicine. We all know what happens to the boy. We flash forward to the wife now being pregnant. But in all that time, you feel like it wasn't an easy go for them even during the off times. It follows that typical formula where everything comes to a head all at once. But I feel like this is things that have been building up for their entire time. You can tell from all the planning that they've been doing, the basement set up with all the cameras, the lights. They've got a system worked out, all the paths that they've created with the sand to try to keep the sound down. So all that to say, this movie does subtlety almost to perfection. The subtle things that happen in the movie that pull you into the tension that they're feeling living in this world where you basically can't talk.
Right.
You can't just go out and have coffee with a friend. You can't do the normal things that we would do. Drive a car. Everything that you could think that we do normally in society draws attention for these monsters, who are terrifying looking. They reminded me of the Demogorgons from Stranger Things on steroids. Instead of a couple of flaps opening like flower petals, it's the whole head opens up. The visual of the ear canal that they show, even that's creepy. One thing I wanted to mention, for a movie that lacks sound for probably 75% of the film, when they do use audio, it is so impactful. The scene towards the end, when the kids are in the grain silo, John Krasinski's character is looking for him. They're trying to navigate the monsters at night, and it gets to the point where the kids are in the truck. John Krasinski realizes one of the monster aliens is on the roof of the shed. He turns, it knocks him away. It's so intense. And then the music changes at the scene where he's standing there and sees the monster attacking the truck, and it becomes more almost like a heartfelt scene. And as he says the "I love you, I've always loved you," gut wrenching. That scene is absolutely gut wrenching. I mean, the way it's acted, everything that builds up to that moment, the guilt the daughter felt, the guilt I'm sure the father felt that couldn't, vocalize to his daughter, that everything. I mean, it was just so much tension between him and her, and it gets to that moment. The son at the waterfall tells him, you should tell her that you love her, and he has the realization, and then it gets to that moment, and then, like I said, that music becomes almost sweet, harmonic, and he looks at, and if you don't, I've been known, Jay knows this, I'm kind of a soulless person. I don't have what people call emotions most of the time. But that one rips your heart out. And that's such a testament to how good this movie is. It's not long. There's not a whole lot that happens except in spurts. The beginning scene, the ending scene, a little bit in the middle, but for the most part, everything is just building that tension. And then you have that sweet moment, and then right back into it. And then the end with where they realize, kind of like in Signs, they realize how to defeat the monsters per se. And that it leaves it optimistic, but I haven't seen the second one, but that it's gonna end. I know, shocker. But it does what it does so well. I didn't realize how great this movie was until I had to sit down and watch it again, and watching it with purpose. A lot of times you watch a movie, you sit down, you just stare at the screen, watch the characters, take it in, and go away. And then when in a situation like this where you're having to talk about it, you watch it with intent. You look at what's going on, the actors, you listen to the music, you watch how the scenes play out, get a depth of understanding of what's going on, and just was blown away. I was like, it was one of the few movies that I watched for a second time and thought, wow, why haven't I watched this again more recently? This is a fantastic movie. The acting's great. The way it's shot is great. The simplicity of everything is just beautiful. So yeah, I absolutely loved this movie. I was glad we had to watch it.
I was just proud that you had seen it before, if I'm being honest. Maggie, you don't know, but Kellen is kind of our noob in the group. Like I said slaps and noob in the same conversation, but there's a lot of movies he hasn't seen, so we introduce him to a lot of fun stuff. So that's fun too, though. It's disappointing, but it's also fun because we get to show it to him. So
he gets to watch new stuff.
Right. So Mag, tell us why this was one of your movie picks and how you connect with it.
Yeah, so I am like, when it comes to horror movies, I cannot do a lot of them. I am like a huge scaredy cat, and like, but sometimes like I will randomly be able to watch like these super like awful movies, and people are like scared of them, and I'm like, oh, like it doesn't bother me. But I don't know. My brain just picks and chooses which ones that it's capable of handling. But I love like any type of sci-fi thriller, like suspense movie, like that is where I thrive. And like any type of creature feature, like I always want to watch them, even if it's like the really crappy like B-rated movies that are like you could tell the CGI was terrible and they filmed it in their backyard. Like those are my favorite movies ever. And so like to see a creature feature like well done is like such a cool thing to me. And I have seen the second one. I love the second one too. Like the whole franchise is something that like I absolutely love because I was like, oh my word, it's like a scary movie, but I kind of like I don't kind of I really like it, but it's not like scary movie, but it falls into the category. So like I can be like, oh yeah, I watch scary movies. And so but I love like the monster reveal, like the way it looks was super cool. Like you said, it reminded me of Demogorgon. I was a huge Stranger Things fan too. And so just being able to see that was like, oh, that's super cool. And I watched Bird Box when it came out, and I feel like A Quiet Place was everything that I wish Bird Box was.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, because I was so disappointed by Bird Box. And like you didn't even see the monsters most of the time. I think they may have like kind of revealed it once, but not really at all. But you get to see the entire monster multiple times in A Quiet Place. And like there's different parts of it that are revealed, like its weaknesses is revealed. But I think it's cool that like one of the characters, he can't really hear anything that's going on without the help of a hearing aid, and the hearing aids that they're trying to make aren't working the best, and so she kind of can't really tell what is too loud and what is an okay sound to make. And so it's cool to see that kind of element. And a lot of people that I talked to that watched it when it first came out, they're like, that movie was so boring, like there was no talking, there was no like whatever. And I was like, that's the whole point, that's why I loved it. Like you had to interpret like everything, and every small detail was there on purpose, and you had to look into things, and you could see the research that the dad was doing and all of this stuff. And like he even went to the lengths to learn sign language to communicate with his daughter, and like all these the doomsday prepping that went into it, that way they could have like a semi-normal life in this weird apocalyptic world. And the second movie goes into that a lot more, and it does a lot of time jumping too to kind of explain how that all came to be. So I love the second movie too. It gives the world so much like more expanse. But yeah, it is a very I like the atmosphere of it as well as like the creatures in it, and I think it does all of that super well in a way that isn't normally done, because usually it's movies are dialogue packed and it has all these jump scare noises, and it's like, no, like you have to be super quiet. And I think that's part of its power, is that you also like subconsciously are not making any noise the entire movie either. And like any like noise anybody, because I think I went and saw this in theaters, and anytime anyone made a noise we were like shh, because we were like, we don't want to miss anything. And so I think that added into it, and it just kind of helped you become part of that world a lot more.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you said the thing about the daughter not being able to hear reminded me of the scene in the cornfield where the monster comes out behind her, and that is such a tense scene because, like you said, she can't hear, so she has no idea it's there. It can't hear her, but you know that just the smallest sound if she makes in that scene, it's over for her, and it's just such a suspenseful moment.
Yeah, it's very Hitchcockian. There was an interviewer once I think back in the 60s, it was interviewing Alfred Hitchcock, who most of us who are film junkies and these kind of movie fans are often credit him as kind of being the master of suspense building. And he was asked once, how do you build suspense in a movie? He said, you take a bomb and you put it in a box and you put that under one of your character's chairs and you don't let that character know about it, but then you show it to the audience and then you just play it out. How long can you drag this out until this bomb's about to blow? Just that uncomfortable thing, and the audience knowing more than the characters, like the scene you just said, Kellen, is a big piece of it. Is us being able to kind of see that kind of God third person kind of point of view outside of the film, looking into the film. But yeah, I think A Quiet Place is probably one of the most masterful horror thrillers of the last 20, 30 years, certainly since the 2000s. And to have a sequel that is almost just as good is almost unheard of, to be at that level. I mean,
Right.
if I was just looking at the IMDb scores, it's like 7.5 and 7.2. You don't get that for horror films nowadays because,
Yeah.
critics are usually the first to trash on a horror film for any one little thing they don't like about it. So, and I think the authenticity of it, this isn't a film for people who like a lot of crash and bang and or who don't like foreign films or don't like reading subtitles, because you have to do a lot of that with the sign language and everything. And some people are just check out with that, but even some people I know that won't watch a subtitled film normally will like A Quiet Place. In fact, it holds a very, very rare record in the Stone household. It's one of the very few horror films I've ever gotten my wife to watch with me, because she loves John Krasinski and Emily Blunt.
Yeah.
And
same in this house. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And all because of Jim.
Well, it was more about Emily Blunt for my wife, but same effect. So I'll take it. I don't know if I'll ever get her to watch the second one now that she's seen the gross monster in the first one, but I'm holding out hope. But the fact that they are married in real life, and the authenticity and just the shorthand of that relationship, and almost being able to say so much with a look that's already has that lived history being brought into the role, just made it so much better. And John Krasinski said he wasn't even trying to, bring that to her. He was looking for maybe like a romantic comedy or something for them to eventually do together. But he was actively looking for other actresses when she asked to read it on a plane one day. And by the end of the plane ride, she read it and was like, I have to do this. This has to be me. And I think she did a masterful job. I mean, the scene in the bathtub and just the dragging out, she's giving birth. How do you give birth silently, knowing that if you make the scream, that the monsters are going to come and kill the baby and you and probably your whole family. And then just the ratcheting up of the tension. I mean, this film is a masterclass in ratcheting up tension all throughout the movie, but because you just live with that tension of like, what's going to happen if we make a noise? And then you see that first scene really lets you know, oh, we've established the threat. There's this monster we just get a brief kind of glimpse of, and then you get a little bit more as it goes on, and it just builds masterfully. I've read that initial screenings that didn't have the CGI and the monster quite right didn't work as well. And actually in some of the reshoots and stuff, John Krasinski himself wore the motion capture uniform on set to actually kind of mime the actions of the monster. And I'm sure any versions you see where John's just walking around in the green suit probably maybe doesn't seem as scary, but just the commitment to the script that he got, I believe, was 67 pages long, and they were kind of thinking it might just be like a pilot to maybe a series or something. And he took it, he added his own touches to it to fill it out, and said, I have to direct it. He'd only directed a couple films before this, and they were more kind of in the comedy realm, because that's the world he was coming from The Office. And to make a turn like this, to be a masterful horror thriller director, and then to do it again a couple years later, is just, it's impressive. I don't think there's ever been quite a movie like that. I mean, there's some thrillers that are effective that don't have a whole lot of dialogue. There's certainly a lot that don't have a lot of good dialogue. For sure, we've all seen those. But I think this is just a lesson in nuance and how less is more, and you can really, the art of filmmaking really comes through in a film like this, where the visuals tell the story. And that harkens back to some of the masters of silent film, like Charlie Chaplin, early days Hitchcock. Tell it with the images and sell it with the actors, and this, it just tells a tight story, but hints at a much larger world that the sequel, and I'm sure the upcoming third movie's slated to come out in 2025 if they finish development. So I'm looking forward to seeing what more they do with this. Jay, what do you think about it?
Well, there's really not much more to touch on than what everyone said. I'm fairly certain I saw it in theaters too. I've probably seen it 4 or 5 times now after watching it again today, just to brush up. I love the film. I love the sequel. The cinematography is great. The direction is great. Millicent Simmons, who plays the daughter, she lost her hearing at 12 months, I think, old. So, she lives that every day. And I, as someone who wear hearing aids myself, appreciated that. But she was so young, and I thought she just did a fantastic job with not speaking, just signing, and just her acting. She was fantastic. It's definitely bookended by gut-wrenching scenes, which Kelly and I talked about today. Like that first scene on the bridge is, we talked about how it's quiet in the theater. You don't want to hear somebody move the popcorn. You don't want to hear someone cough because you're so focused on this film. And then we're so focused on this quiet, and then all of a sudden, I think you see the family's back, and you hear that toy go off, and you're just like your heart drops. It's so hard to watch, and it comes fast, and it sets the precedent for the rest of the movie. Like, this is going to be brutal. Like, this is the world they're in. It's a brutal, bad world. We're not going to sugarcoat anything. No one's safe. I appreciated that. I know that's one of Joe Bob Briggs' rules in cinema is you don't harm children. But when you do, when you do, you remember that, and it sticks with you. And then, of course, the ending where John Krasinski screams and sacrifices himself for his family, that's gut-wrenching too, because he's worked so hard to build this environment for them to be safe. And even though he decided to have a child with his wife during these times, he made, preparations where she could, be somewhat soundproof. So seeing him having to, sacrifice everything he's done to make the ultimate sacrifice, that's hard to watch too. My biggest knock on the movie, and I was telling Kellen this too, is like, who gets pregnant during a situation like this? And granted, it could have been an accident, but you got to be more careful. Like, the world's hard enough. Right. You've lost one child. What should we do? Let's replace them. Well, yeah, but it's going to cry. It's okay. We'll figure it out. Like that's the worst part for me in the entire thing. And again, if you take that away, what are they going to do with this first movie? It's a big part of everything. The only other part I really hated in the movie was the nail part, but I didn't hate it because it was a bad scene. I hated it because I felt it through my entire body when she stepped on it. And that's another like foreshadowing. Like, you see it before it happens. You're like, damn, like something's going to happen there and I'm not going to like it. But yeah, it's definitely a masterclass in all the fields. I think I knew John Krasinski had directed a few other films, but I knew they weren't anything like this. And the fact that he took a a decent script and turned into a great script. Like, bravo. Like, I would have never expected that as an Office fan, like seeing him turn into what he's turned into now. Like, he's Jack Ryan, it's crazy what he's become. But he was fantastic directing this and his writing and the acting. And I think him and having his wife in it too made it a little bit more special. I'm still fingers crossed with them being Mr. and Mr. Fantastic in the future of the Fantastic Four, even though I don't think that's going to happen. But you could feel that connection come off the screen as well. So that definitely made an impact. The Monopoly scene, that was another scene that was super intense because, here we are with our little plush figures being as quiet as we can. And then boom, lantern gets knocked over. I couldn't even imagine, like, I can take my hearing aids out and I can still kind of hear. Like, I couldn't even imagine not being able to hear anything, not being able to be aware of my surroundings and living in the world that I know we live in and how loud it is. Like, it's a very terrifying concept. There's some people I wish lived in a world where they couldn't speak, but that's another thing. So, but yeah, I loved it. We'll go around, do our ratings, and then we'll start close up shop. So for me, I was 4.5, but the more I sit and think about it, it has all the aspects I look for in a movie. Like, it's something I can watch over and over again. It's something I'm happy to show other people. It's something that people who don't like horror movies still kind of like. So I boosted it up to a 5 for me. So I gave it a 5 out of 5. Wow. Kellen?
Yeah. I touch on something that Jay said just about the kid dying in the beginning of the movie. I typically agree with that. You don't hurt animals, you don't hurt kids, unless it's meaningful and unless it makes sense for the movie, and that sets the tone for everything. And it's not drawn out, it's not overly violent, it's super quick. But that super quick scene, watching John run, like sprint as hard as he could just to come up short, sets the tone for the whole movie. And that's the part that puts you on the edge of your seat and keeps you there for the rest of the movie. So yeah, you don't want to see kids get hurt in films, but if you have to, this is almost another aspect where this is a masterclass in showing how to do something that would be considered taboo in a way that's meaningful and perfect for the situation. But for all the reasons Jay said, I was thinking about it on the way home, and I have to give it a 5 too. It does everything that it meant to do perfectly, and it's up there in one of the most perfect suspense movies. As far as just in general, I don't like to give a lot of 5s, but this movie it gets under your skin immediately, and it lives inside you until that the ending credits. So yeah, I give it a 5.
And you're never bored in it either. Like, there's always movies where something is happening and you kind of check out for a second. But after watching it again today, there's not 1 second where you check out at all. So that helps too. All right, Maggie, what'd you give it?
This is one of my favorite movies ever. I just automatically gonna give it 5 out of 5, but I feel like it's not an undeserving 5 out of 5 because, like you're saying, just the atmosphere of it. You're never bored, and you're forced to pay attention because of just every little thing is meaningful in it. And the acting is so well, especially coming from an actress who is young but also deaf, so she knows the character like way more than most people know their characters, but you can still see all of the emotions coming through her. Like, when they have arguments, she's like signing, but she's like pointing, and like you can see like the anger off of her. And I was like, oh my goodness, like most normal kid actors don't even have this good of like an expression of emotions, but she's signing, and you know what she's feeling just from signing. Like, she's not even saying anything, and you can understand it. And so just I fell in love with all of the characters as well as like the atmosphere. But yeah, just the whole movie is compelling to me. I love it, and so it's a 5 out of 5 in my book.
Nice. All right, TJ.
Wow. Well, I was leaning somewhere around the 4.5, but after you guys have made all your cases, and I can't really disagree with it, we might have a historical precedence here. I think I gotta bump it up 5 out of 5, if for no other reason than it's one of the literally handful of horror films that I've been able to watch with my wife, and she actually wanted to watch it.
Nice. So that would be a 5, and that's probably also because John's not here to drag it
He would
down.
give it a 2.5 just for reasons.
I kind of feel like he would like this one, but I don't know if he would get a 5 or not. But that's going to be a 5. All right, so that's going to be a wrap on this episode. Thank everyone for checking us out. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to wherever you listen to this podcast. Also, check us out on Instagram. Magdalene, thank you so much for joining us. You want to take a second, tell everybody what's going on in your life, tour-wise, music-wise?
Yeah, so we should be on tour by the time this episode comes out with a band called Fozzy. And so it'll be Fozzy, Seventh Day Slumber, me, and the Nocturnal Affair. So we'll
Chris
be
Jericho's
doing that
band.
tour. Yeah, it's
Awesome.
it's a lot of fun tour with him. I went on a tour with him back when I was with GFM, and so now we're doing Magdalene Rose tour, and we're making it we're diving into the theatrics of it a lot more. We're kind of making it this big like thing. There's a big LED wall, and we have like control of all the lights and stuff. So we're gonna make it this big like thing where all the lights are off, and then like there's one person on stage just silhouetted, and all of it's gonna tie into like the next band and stuff. So I'm super excited for everybody to see that. All of the dates are online. So if you haven't checked those yet, all of my social media is official Magdalene Rose, and we're constantly posting where we're going to be at every day. So definitely check that out. We've got new music coming out all the time. We just released a song a little bit ago called A Bad Residential featuring Spencer Chamberlain from Under Oath. And that is like one of the bucket list things in my life, is working with somebody that I grew up listening to. And I got the chance to do that on that song. And it kind of ties into the horror aspect because it is about night terrors and just these super graphic things that I was dealing with, when I would sleep. And so I was too scared to go to sleep and didn't really sleep for like 6 months. And so the song is just kind of about the process of kind of overcoming that and kind of getting those visuals out. And I figured if I wrote them down, it would kind of help me like see, okay, these aren't real. This is not like an actual thing. And it helps my brain kind of process that. And so, we're hoping that it resonates with a lot of people, with anybody who's ever dealt with PTSD and or night terrors and has struggled with that. We're hoping it resonates with anybody and just helps them push forward and continue fighting, and realize that there is hope and that it will get better one day, and that there is power in continuing to fight and choose to live every day. And we have a ton of fun on tour. We release tour vlogs as much as we can on our YouTube channel and stuff. And so all of our social media, we're just constantly posting and helping everybody see kind of the behind the scenes of tours. Like, yes, there's these big, great tour pictures, but also, hey, we just did this really dumb thing on an off day. We think you'll think it's funny. So we just have a lot of fun. So we hope you'll join us on our social media as that official Magdalene Rose, and we hope to see you on a tour date pretty soon.
Awesome. So go check her out. Great music. And I also kind of grew up with Under Oath. I'm a little bit older than you, but I love Under Oath. Like, and they've not put out an album that is not amazing. Like, it's insane for a band to do that just constantly. But be sure to go follow her on social media, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all that fun stuff. Check out on tour. I loved how TJ's eyes slowly widened after you said Fozzy. Like, he was putting it together. He's like, Chris Jericho.
I'm an old school wrestling fan, and I love the band Fozzy.
Fozzy's great. Chris Jericho will be on with us next week. But so just kidding. Thank you again. Thank you again, Magdalene, for joining us. It was great. Thank you for making us watch another movie that we all love. And thanks, John, for not dragging the 5 down to a 4. We appreciate it. So for Jay, Kellen, TJ, and Magdalene, until next time,
keep it spooky.